everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, and California, here we come, right back where we started from. California, here we come, California. It's San Jose, California is the host of this week's Raw, but how good was Raw, and did it build nicely to stomping grounds at the end of the month? There's only one way to find out, and that is by assigning each individual segment a lovely individual grade. So let's get to it, because this is Monday Night Raw Graded. Seth Rollins opens the show and proclaims that this is the new era of the Universal title, and he says that you can't take it from him, but you can try in 3 different ways. It's nice of him to break it down for us like that. He says there's 3 choices. You can try and out-wrestle him, but then he says there is no one on this planet who can lace my boots. I was like, wow, that's a bit cocky for babyface Rollins, but he says there's no other wrestler on the planet who can even lace his boots. He says you can try and out-wrestle him, out-fight him, or do it the hard way like Brock Lesnar and feel the wrath of his chair shots and stuff. So out-wrestle, out-fight, try like Brock Lesnar did. That's very much like a case of this is going to test your head and your mind and your brain. They're all sort of the similar thing, aren't they? Ish. Rollins is cut off by Baron Corbin, who comes out and says, oh, you're crap, you, San Jose, and you're crap as well, Seth Rollins. And everyone boos Corbin for ages, and he stalls and stalls. And so eventually he gets to his point, which is, I learned things as GM, which means I get to choose the referee for our match at Stomping Grounds. But how does that make sense? That's just lazy writing, in my opinion. But Seth goes, well then who are you going to pick to be special guest referee? Because you don't have any friends. Forgetting, of course, that Baron has been in more little, like, sort of semi-permanent heel factions than I've had hot dinners. But then Sami Zayn comes out and goes, you know what? I'm Team Baron Corbin on this one, Seth, and I think it'd be better for you and everyone if he was Universal Champion instead. And I was like, oh, this is a little bit lazy, isn't it? No one's motives are quite making sense. And then Seth says, all right, well then who's going to have your back, Sami, when I walk up that ramp and punch you in the mouth? And I was thinking, Corbin will have his back, because he's right next to him, but apparently that's not good enough. Kevin Owens comes out, wild card. He even says, I'm here as a wild card, whatever that means, which was my favourite line of the entire night. Owens and Seth then argue a little bit, and that sets up a match between the two, non-title I believe, for the main event of the evening. But, I mean, that is an exciting matchup, but the rest of the segment for me was very frustrating. Yeah, I'm going to have to give this opening segment a C-, unfortunately. It's a bit of a low grade, but I just found it really frustrating. I don't think anyone's motives really made sense. And even though, yeah, the main event is quite an exciting and fresh matchup, I think it was too convoluted a way to get there, really. Next up, we get Lars Sullivan in 3-on-1 handicap action with elimination rules against the Lucha House Party. This was actually a very effective and pretty entertaining squash match. You know what? Lars took out Kalisto pretty much straight away, then Lince Dorado shortly afterwards, then he beat up Grand Metalik but didn't pin him. He did the old, oh, I'm going to pull up your shoulder at 2 because I'm not finished dishing out punishment on the message boards online. Then he beat up Lince and Kalisto on the outside a little bit more just for fun, and then he finished off Grand Metalik in the ring and pinned him. And I thought, yes, why didn't they just do that more recently? Why didn't they just do that at Saudi Arabia, or even on the Raw the week before, or whenever they could have? They had so many opportunities to do this and they just never did. So yeah, I'm going to give this a B-. I was originally going to give it a B, but I did have to penalise it slightly just because this really should have happened earlier and I don't know why they waited. Next up, let's talk about the 24/7 title shenanigans that went on throughout Raw last night. These aren't always going to be great, are they? I mean, I love the stuff on the plane on the way over to Jeddah. And I loved some of the stuff that Drake Maverick's been doing online. I love the golf course stuff with Jinder. But yeah, sometimes you're going to get a stinker, I suppose. And last night was a little bit of a stinker. So it starts off with R-Truth and Carmella running away from everyone because obviously it's just constant Scooby-Doo this. It's just constant Scooby-Doo. There's no tactics. They just chase each other in a gaggle. They get to the elevators and then all brawl. And then they stop as Truth presses the button for the elevator to come down. And they just wait and let him get on. Half the chasing pack get in the elevator with him, half of them stay outside as the doors close because they can't fit in, and then the lift gets stuck. The elevator, I've been saying elevator all this time, but I dropped in a lift by accident. In the UK, if you're not from the UK, we call it a lift, because it lifts you. What does elevator mean? Well, it means that it elevates you, I guess, but yeah. Later on, they're all still in the elevator, realise they can't pin R-Truth because there's no referee in there with them, so they just sort of chat and get to know each other a bit. EC3 contemplates cannibalism, I think. He pulls out a fork at one point. Later on, the elevator doors open again. Truth runs out, gets met by the other group who was stuck on the outside, who've apparently been waiting there all show for about 2.5 hours, and then He gets back inside, Carmella helps him back into the elevator, which is now empty, and that's how they make their escape. Yeah, it was a bad week for this, I'm afraid to say. The conversations inside the elevator were a little bit funny, I suppose, but yeah, I'm gonna have to give it a D. It really wasn't for me. And that's a shame, because I do enjoy the 24/7 gimmick, so hopefully by tomorrow, or by tonight on SmackDown, it's a little bit better again. Next up, Michael Cole conducts a sit-down interview with Becky Lynch and Lacey Evans ahead of their title match at Stomping Grounds, but it's not like a sit-down interview in the same room. It's him from commentary talking to both of them on like a split screen, as if they're playing GoldenEye on the N64. I'm not going to go over everything they said, because they said quite a lot without really saying much at all, if that makes any sort of sense. They basically just built to the match at Stomping Grounds and threw a lot of insults at each other along the way. Unfortunately, and this sounds pretty harsh, I'm going to have to give this a D+. That's not the fault of the women, because they're both generally good promos, or very good promos on their day. It was more the fault of the script, which was contrived and a little bit boring, and also the format, especially the format, because if they'd done exactly this same segment but just stood in the ring across from each other, I'd have found it totally far more believable, but something about the whole setup just made what they were saying sound completely scripted. It was hard to immerse yourself in it because it seemed so fake, it seemed particularly false, and I know the promos are always over the top and dramatic, but this was especially weird. I don't know if it was the lack of crowd noise or the fact that they were just reciting lines to each other and just taking turns to soliloquy basically, but it was really strange and I just wasn't a fan of it at all, sadly. Next up, it's time for Miz TV. The guest this week is Samoa Joe, the United States champion, but he's not the only person in this segment, because there was just so many people who made their way out and said like 2 lines or so, and it was one of those ones, like a revolving door kind of segment. It was like an opening segment. It was like a bonus, a second opening segment in the middle of the show. How lucky, guys. Hooray. I'll just go through my notes because it's probably easier, because quite a lot was said. So Miz and Joe got into an argument about Joe's treatment of Rey Mysterio, remember? But they were then cut off by Braun Strowman, who is here for no reason. Well, he kinda is. He wants the belt from Joe, but then Lashley's here and he's angry because he lost to Braun at Super Showdown and he's not done and also wants the belt. I wrote this like an hour ago, am I alright? Ricochet, just one sentence, Ricochet. He also wants a shot at Joe. Cesaro, one sentence. He wants a shot, no wait, he just punches Ricochet, ha ha ha, fair. They brawl briefly and the faces stand tall. What could be next? I think there I've implied quite sarcastically that this is almost certainly leading to a lovely 6-man tag. Yeah, I'm going to give this a C-, unfortunately. There was no real... This was very similar to the opening segment. Everyone's motives were a little bit askew and rushed. It felt a little bit rushed. I guess you could argue, well, they do have motives, Jack. They all want Joe's United States title, but at the same time, they've all been shoehorned into this. None of them were really floating around the division. None of them had ever really expressed their intention to take that title. So why all coincidentally do they suddenly do it in this one segment? You know what I mean? It's kind of contrived and forced. But it wasn't so bad. I mean, I guess if this is true and they all do become Joe's new United States title division around him, then that leads to a series of very entertaining matches, like Joe versus Cesaro, Joe versus Lashley. I'd probably quite like to see, to be fair. Joe versus Ricochet has the potential to be awesome. So yeah, I don't mind it too much. It was just a bit of a difficult watch. And this did lead to a 6-man tag team match. We had Miz, Braun and Ricochet against Joe, Cesaro and Lashley. And at first I was really frustrated because Lashley had kind of got in Joe's face a little bit during the previous segment. We hit a commercial break and when we come back, the heels and faces have naturally fallen onto even teams. I always find that quite annoying. I don't think I'd find it as annoying if it was just once in a while, but it's every single week, it feels like. In fairness though, the match is pretty fun, and they do kind of explain the Lashley-Joe tension and why they ended up on the same team despite not being friends. They do kind of explain it when Joe is overpowered by Braun in the ring, thinks I've had enough of this match, grabs his title and just heads for the back. And Corey on commentary does a great job of saying, yep, Joe has no allegiance to anybody in this match, they all want his title, why would he stick around? And I was like, yes, that's actually good, I'm glad you said that. So with the babyfaces having a 3-on-2 advantage, the match doesn't go on much longer. Cesaro falls victim to the skull-crushing finale and the 630 from Ricochet, but if you watch, Ricochet landed like right on his legs and it looked a little bit nasty. Apparently Cesaro was limping away at the end as well, but I think we've had a look at the news earlier, it seems as though he's actually alright, so that's good to hear. That aside, this gets a B grade. I thought it was pretty fun, certainly a highlight of the show, and yeah, no complaints at all. Just the setup to the match was a little bit contrived, but the match itself, perfectly decent fun. Next up, Becky Lynch and Bayley, 2 of the 4 horsewomen. Yo. That was absolutely pathetic. Versus Alexa Bliss with Nikki Cross in her corner, of course, and Lacey Evans. So we kind of got a champions versus challengers setup going on. Earlier in the night, before this match, we had a little backstage segment with Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, with Alexa being her old self, which was kind of disappointing to see after some recent character development, but she fell back into her old ways. I guess you could say it's because she's getting close to the gold, she's the #1 contender for Bayley's title, kind of makes sense. But anyway, she basically tries to manipulate Nikki and says that Bayley's the manipulative one, and that's why Nikki should stay as her friend and be in her corner, and Nikki's like, oh, I guess so then, mate, alright then. Horribly offensive. Bayley is, of course, on Raw despite being the SmackDown Women's Champion because she is, well, because of the wildcard rule, of course. Bitches, wildcard. But also because Bayley is the hometown hero. She's from San Jose, so she gets a huge pop when she comes out, and it's nice to see. This isn't a brilliant match. It's okay in parts. Bayley hits a sunset flip kind of throw into the corner on Alexa, and she hits her head on the turnbuckle, and everyone's like, oh no. And there's quite a response online for it as well, given Alexa's recent injury history. But she seemed okay, and she was able to finish the match, and she looked perfectly fine, but it was more, I guess, the idea to put the spot in the match that angered so many fans online. On the outside, Lacey Evans uses Nikki Cross to kind of distract Becky Lynch, kind of throws her in the way, and then just takes out Becky Lynch with a big right hand. It's really, really good stuff, and Becky sells it really well. Then Lacey hits Bayley as she's leaning through the ropes. Alexa can't quite pick up the victory, but then Lacey tags herself in and takes out Bayley herself and pins the hometown girl. So Lacey looks like a destroyer at the expense of the SmackDown Women's Champion in her hometown. Very conflicted here, to be honest. I'm gonna give this a C. It was okay, it was fine. It was certainly better than like Lacey versus Charlotte from last week, and Lacey showed an improved effort, but at the same time, I think this was one of those rare instances where I'd have actually preferred to have seen a screwy finish or a non-finish, or even just book a different match. Don't have this match going on, because I don't think any of the 4 women involved really could afford to take the loss here. I think this could harm Bayley, and I think that even though Lacey looks really good and it adds to the Becky versus Lacey match, equally it takes away something from the Alexa versus Bayley match, which is pretty sad, really. Next up, we have a promo from Paul Heyman. Of course, it's an excellent promo as always. But he doesn't say much, you know, it really feels like he's filling time. He says he's disgusted at the fans, for example, for their cheering of Seth Rollins despite his treatment of Paul's client Brock Lesnar and all. If you've heard a Paul Heyman promo recently in the past 5 years or so, you'll know exactly what this is. But then in a good move, Heyman refuses to tell us when Brock plans to cash in next, which I think is better than just advertising him to cash in on certain nights and then not having it happen, and also teases that maybe he'll show up at Stomping Grounds. I'm going to give it a B. Good promo from Heyman. Obviously Brock wasn't there, so they kind of just sent Heyman out to fill time and keep the storyline moving on, and that was pretty plain to see, but that doesn't mean it wasn't executed well. You can always rely on Paul to cut a good promo, so B grade is the grade. Well done, Paul. B for you. Lost track a little bit at the end there, but you know what I mean. Next up, the Iconics versus Lisa Lace and Aaliyah Mia, which commentary found hilarious for some reason. I think there was some kind of in-joke going on. Basically, the Iconics cut a heel promo and said, yo, we're going to bring out San Jose's best and beat them to prove we're better than all of you. And then they do, but they're not San Jose's best. They're just, you know, 2 enhancement talents, or jobbers, as the term would be said. I find that offensive, though, to be honest. It is what it is. It's just a squash match. And the Iconics, though, finally pick up a bloody victory. Can you actually believe it? I'm going to give it a C-. You know, it's good to see the Iconics finally pick up a victory, but that doesn't mean it was particularly fun to watch. Next up, Shane McMahon is out alongside Drew McIntyre to celebrate his big victory over Roman Reigns at Super Showdown. Shane McMahon beat Roman Reigns, and what is going on? The world's upside down. So Shane and Drew get in the ring. Shane cuts a promo. There's like balloons and stuff and champagne. And Shane cuts a promo putting over Roman. Putting over all his accomplishments. You know, he's won the Royal Rumble. He's won the WWE title. He's won the Universal title. Goes through all that and then says, but he still couldn't beat me, the best in the world, Shane McMahon. And everyone's obviously hating it. Everyone boos, which I guess makes it a good promo. But Shane, though, I must mention, is so out of breath during this promo, it's quite strange. Shane also thanks Drew for his emotional support, even though it was very physical support. Drew actually hit Roman with the Claymore kick behind the ref's back, lest we forget. And then Drew himself takes the mic and cuts a very Drew promo on Roman Reigns, or a very WWE Drew promo, I should say, where he says, you know, I'm gonna humiliate you, I'm gonna be a deck to you, you know, the sort of thing. He's gonna beat him at Stomping Grounds, is what he's saying. Shane then pops some champagne, he's at it again, caught up in the moment, but not in the right way, and him and Drew share a bit of a drink. Then the Revival come out because their title match is next, and Shane goes, no drinks for you guys unless you bring some gold to the after party. And I was like, ooh, pretty cool heel badass stuff there, guys. The Revival look confident, and their match is up next. I'm actually going to give this a B. I found Shane McMahon's whole thing so frustrating recently, but I can't deny that this was a good follow-up to a very questionable booking decision in Saudi Arabia. At least he milked it, and at least he was really ironic about it and was like, yeah, thanks Drew for your emotional support, even though we all know that Drew actually basically won in the match. I can get on board with this kind of heel promo, so it does get a B grade, but that doesn't mean that I fully support Shane's recent arc. In fact, I bloody hate it. So yes, it's the Raw Tag Team title match between the champions, Curt Hawkins and Zack Ryder. Yes, they're the champions. We haven't seen them for a bit, but you know, they're still there. They're still in the mix. Against the Revival, against the Usos. 3-team tag team action. This is a fun little match. All 3 teams get little moments to shine here and there, and the finish is clever and inventive too. Jey Uso goes crazy with like a super kick party, taking out just about everybody apart from his brother, of course. That would be silly. Then he goes up top for a splash, but Scott Dawson's like sneaking up onto the apron, blind tags himself in. Jey hits the splash onto Zack Ryder in the middle of the ring, but before he can pin him, well, he can't pin him, he's the illegal man. Dawson scoots in, hoists him off. Dash Wilder's on the outside and holds Jey's leg in place so he can't break up the pinfall, and Scott Dawson steals it and wins the Revival the Raw Tag Team titles. They are once again the Raw Tag Team Champions. This gets a B grade too. It wasn't out of this world or anything, but it was a good match, correct result. It's a shame for Hawkins and Ryder that their reign was so muted and so... It was a bit of a nothing reign really, but at least they got that moment on the WrestleMania pre-show when they won and it was big and feel good. But I'm glad that the Revival are champions, and hopefully it leads to some excellent matches with the Usos in the near future, and they just keep it in the ring and less about shaving each other's backs or whatever the whole feud was about. Mocking them for shaving each other's backs? It's just efficient, teamwork, in the shower, all the boys. It was stupid. Let's stop talking about it. Next up, it's the weekly edition of the Firefly Funhouse with Bray Wyatt, of course. But there's been a bit of a fallout from 2 of his puppets. So Ramblin Rabbit is annoyed at Mercy the Buzzard because Mercy tried to eat Ramblin Rabbit again, and Bray's like, oh no, Ramblin Rabbit, if you've got something to say, you can have the floor. The floor is yours. And Ramblin Rabbit goes, you know what? I don't feel safe here. Friends shouldn't try and eat each other, and I don't feel safe. And you know what? I might even expose some of the secrets that have been going on inside the Firefly Funhouse. And everyone's like, ooh. But Bray grabs him and goes, why would you do that? And then kills him with a mallet. Kills Ramblin Rabbit. Ramblin Rabbit blades. There's blood on the floor and everything. And then Bray turns him into a breakfast spread. Breakfast sauce. Delicious. This gets a B grade. It's good stuff as usual, but it wasn't a patch on last week's one with the dance, the gym exercise, dance aerobics kind of stuff, and the Vince McMahon doll. I was hoping the Vince McMahon doll would become a recurring character, but he hasn't shown up again yet. Please bring him back. It was my favourite thing about about Raw. My favourite thing about Raw. And finally the main event, Seth Rollins versus Kevin Owens, which I confess I was hyped for, and I just shouldn't have been because I'm an idiot. And it wasn't very fun to watch. Basically what happened was, midway through the night, Sami Zayn bumped into Shane McMahon backstage and convinced him to let Sami become the special guest, like outside referee during the main event to give him practice so that he can prove that he's a worthwhile special guest ref for the Rollins-Corbin match at Stomping Grounds. Silly, silly, silly stuff, because if Sami does get made the special guest referee for that pay-per-view, then it's just heel nonsensory, isn't it? Because we saw how fun the show was when Baron Corbin was the corrupt GM and everything was under his whim and everything was unfair. If Shane does it too, is it really any different? So basically throughout this match, Owens versus Rollins, Sami Zayn is a dick. He's distracting the real ref, John Cone. He's stopping Rollins from pressing the advantage to check on Owens and all that sort of thing. And I get it, I get the point of it. I understand wrestling. It's to get heel heat on the heels so that when Rollins eventually wins, whether it be tonight or at Stomping Ground, it's a bigger feel-good victory. I understand how it works. But it's not what we need at the end of a 3-hour show. It's just not very fun. At one stage, Rollins does a dive onto Owens on the outside. It brushes Sami, who really oversells it. He's like, oh, he hit me. Then Rollins gets back in the ring, curb stomps Owens, but before John Cone can count to 3, Sami pulls him out and says, disqualify Rollins, he hit me with the suicide dive just a little bit earlier. John Cone's like, no, what are you talking about? And then Rollins and Zayn get into a confrontation, and Rollins grabs Zayn by the lapels, and then Zayn calls for the bell, and they ring it then. So they didn't ring it when he called for it earlier because John Cone said no, but this time they do ring it, even though we've already established that Sami Zayn doesn't have the authority to... It's okay. It doesn't matter. It's only wrestling, Jack. It's fine. After the match, Rollins beats down Sami Zayn until Baron Corbin arrives and blindsides Rollins, beats him down, but then Rollins fights back with a steel chair, which is becoming kind of his signature thing at the moment. Then Corbin bails because he's had enough of that, watches from the ramp as well as Rollins destroys Sami Zayn in the ring, and that's Raw. That was the end. This segment gets a D+. I just found it really frustrating, and as I say, I understood the point of it and why they did it, but it wasn't fun for me. And I'm not the sort of person who hates when heels win and stuff like that. It's more just like this manner of a match, especially at the end of a 3-hour show in the main event, was incredibly frustrating in my opinion. And as well, for all that frustration, it's only built into a match that we don't want to see anyway, Rollins versus Corbin again, so what is really the point? So yeah, for the overall grade for this Raw from San Jose, California, I'm going to give it a C-, unfortunately. I thought the action was generally alright. I thought that the big 6-man match was good, I thought the Raw tag title match was good, and I thought the women's tag match had its moments as well. I just think the storyline stuff and the promo segments and all that were generally quite frustrating and slow-paced, and in some situations as well, fast-paced. Felt a little bit rushed too, like the opening segment and the lovely bonus opening segment we got midway through the show too. So, bit of a weak show in my opinion. Hopefully they pick it up soon. I don't know if I'm confident or not. We'll see next week. But anyway, thank you for watching. That was Raw Graded. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter @Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.